Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to discuss what happened with our last pregnancy. Basically, I just want to get these feelings out because they're kind of eating me up right now. And if you haven't been following me on Instagram, that's where I update you most frequently. I did share that we did lose our current pregnancy. And if you're on my YouTube channel, you probably had no idea this was happening. And I'll just get into the whole thing. There's a bunch of reasons for that. So let me just start where my last fertility journey ended. So my part one of my fertility story ended on January 30th. I filmed it on January 30th. An appointment with our RE, who was absolutely amazing. We love her. That next day. So what we discussed there, we discussed all of our story. So anyway, we went over that. We had plans. I was going to go once my cycle started, since I was going to start my cycle maybe the next week after we had seen her. This was a Wednesday, January 31st. And we were going to go. I was going to do all of the blood work over. She was going to run some tests for herself. I was going to do an SHG, which is a saline sonogram to kind of make sure there's nothing going on in your uterus. I was going to do that. I was going to start metformin. I had been taking that Ovasitol, like I mentioned, but metformin is the one that has actual scientific research backed up with it. I was going to start some medicine to jumpstart my period so we could get this testing going. So that was the Wednesday. That Saturday, I just took a test because I knew my period was coming up, allegedly. You know, I am still semi-irregular. And I took a test, and it was so faint. I only saw it in person on a first response. And I sent it to my mom. She didn't see it. Went about my day, you know, had drinks that night with my husband. Just kind of like, oh yeah, well, you know, I'm excited to get started. And this was like our last, I was getting a little upset because it was our last chance, you know, or I thought, to conceive naturally before we went through, like, we were fully expecting to have to do IVF at some point this year. We potentially may still. But yeah, that was the February 3rd. So that next morning, the Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, I took a test, and the lines were very definite, and my husband saw it, and everyone I sent to, I only told my mom, my sister at that point, and my dad by default, since it's only the four of us, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, and I was just kind of terrified. For some reason, you know, going through infertility, it seems like getting pregnant naturally on my own, like I didn't know how to navigate that. Like it wasn't, we didn't know what the follicles were. We didn't know what my hormones were doing. We didn't know anything. So I kind of flipped out and I called my RE's office and was like, I need to come in. I need to get my progesterone checked because I'd always been on progesterone supplementation throughout my 2-week wait. And I need to do a beta HCG test. So that next Monday, that was February 5th, we went in for my first beta at 8 a.m. and that came back at 35. And my progesterone came back at 16. I think they'd like to see anything over 10, but because I was still seeing a reproductive endocrinologist, they like to see things above a 20 just to make sure you're good for baseline. So I started those 2 suppositories daily. And if you've never had progesterone suppositories, you should be grateful because they're vaginal suppositories and they leak constantly. So it's just constant like pads and liners, and it's just a mess. But you know, if you had to do it to support pregnancy, then it was whatever. So we had that beta test that day, and then we came back on that Wednesday, and I'm just going to stop naming dates because I can't look at them up right now. We came back that Wednesday, and to make sure it had doubled, because that's what a pregnancy is supposed to do. So that number came back at 86. So that had more than doubled, and we were really excited about that. So, you know, the weeks go on, or the next week comes, and I'm just waiting. We're trying to wait we don't know how far along I am since I wasn't being monitored. So they're trying to wait a few weeks for me to come in so we can actually see something on ultrasound. So in between me waiting for an ultrasound from that 86 that Wednesday, they told us to schedule one for 2 weeks. So I was kind of freaking out, like, what if something's wrong? And just, you know, I'm a naturally anxious person, and I, you know, tend to flip out and all of this. So I went to my therapist. We had a good session. She's like, just calm, just breathe, you know, just make sure, just believe it's going to happen, and just be mindful, take deep breath, and stop and allow yourself to have these anxious feelings. So I saw her the 13th, And then I called and asked them if I can come in on the 14th for just another random beta test, just to ease my mind, to make sure that, you know, this wasn't real, because it's so surreal to finally be pregnant after you tried for so long. You just, I don't know, I just had a hard time believing it. My husband was so supportive, and he was so great through this whole thing. So on Valentine's Day, I went in for another beta just to check, just a baseline, and that one came back at 2,036. So everything was doubling, like, amazingly. That was way higher than it should have been. I think if you keep calculating the doubling time, it should have been maybe around 600. So it was at 2,000, I think. So we were great with that. So then another week goes by. And at this point, it had been, yeah, about 2 weeks since we had found out, 2.5 weeks since we had found out. So we go in for our first ultrasound. I don't know what to expect, but we're there. I was apparently like 5 or 6. I think based on my last period, I should have been a little bit farther along, but at this ultrasound, they told me I was maybe a week behind where I should have been based on my last period. And I have a regular period, so that's not an accurate date. So that first ultrasound, we saw just the gestational sac. So, you know, things like a blighted ovum weren't ruled out or anything like that. Did I check HCG then? I think it was 14,000 as well. So everything was just continuing how it should be as far as my blood was concerned. And so we checked that, and all we saw was gestational sac measuring, you know, about 5 weeks, 5.5 weeks pregnant. So they're like, you know what, honestly, we can't really tell you much because we don't know when you conceive, so we don't want you to worry yet. We just need you to come back in another week. So it was another week of waiting. So we go back, and I'm supposed to be around 6 weeks, very beginning of my 6th week. And we have another ultrasound a week later, or the beginning of my 6th week / somewhere within the 7th, based on the 2 days. I was kind of measuring in between, like 5 days, give or take, in between the due date based on my date of conception and where I was measuring, which would have been, the baby would have been due anywhere from October 18th to the 23rd based on these days. So that time we saw the sac, a gestational sac had grown, which was right on target. Well, actually it was a few days ahead of where it should have been. And we could clearly see a yolk sac that time. So we're really excited about that. I was really happy with it. And the technician did kind of make a comment. She was like, oh, okay, the sac is slightly irregular shaped. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And I asked my doctor and her nurse practitioner like what that meant. And she's like, well, it's really too early to tell. We're not really going to put much stock into that. So then, I just want to say, just to remember, throughout this whole time, because you're putting these vaginal suppositories in, it irritates your cervix. So I had been spotting like brown the entire time. Like usually when I would, you know, just random times based on certain activity, I would be spotting brown and sometimes like red, but just for like a second of a white. This is a TMI video. If you're here, if you're still listening, I'm getting a TMI because I want to remember everything about this, even though as much as I want to forget it right now. So yeah, so I called in about that. So that always kind of put me on edge, even though I had read on forums that was normal. That's what a lot of people had experienced being on progesterone suppositories. It's just really sensitive up there. So we got to the 6th week ultrasound. So then she wanted me to wait a week and a half before coming back just to make sure everything was growing and that it would stop worrying me every single week. So I waited that week and a half. You know, I went about my day. Like Doug and I went to Bye Bye Baby once just to look around, and I parked in the expectant mother's parking, and that was really fun. I'd never gotten to do that before. I had been reading books. I got him like a book about, you know, the Dummy's Guide to Pregnancy, only because I read that it had some good sections about dads who had been through infertility. So we did that in the meantime. So this brings us to about 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago at this point? Yeah. March 16th. So we go in for our next ultrasound. They drew blood, and at this point my HCG was at 31,000, which was, you know, kind of appropriately doubling, because doubling time slows down the farther you get in your pregnancy. I should have been around 8 weeks at this point. And we go, and we're looking, and I noticed she's taking a really long time to sit there and look for the baby. But she eventually finds the baby, she finds the fetal pole, and we heard the heartbeat. It was a little slow, about 96 beats per minute, and they wanted to see anything over 100. Anything over 100 was, you know, considered safe zone, so she was like, it's a little slow. So we heard it, and we saw the little baby moving around, which was really, really awesome. So I was concerned a little because I knew about heart rates and, you know, what that meant. And I could tell the tech was concerned too, but she never told me anything beyond, well, it's really kind of hard to find, and I'm just digging around, and let me take some measurements and all that. So she's like, so at this point, we're like, we need to have an OB check, and I wonder at this point, did my doctor suspect it? And they didn't let us know until further on to just not worry us, because we had to meet with the doctor that day. And I don't know if she wanted to meet with me maybe to discharge me from being seen by a fertility doctor, or she suspected something was not quite right here. So we met with the doctor, and she comes in and she shows me the pictures, and you start to see like little, like you see the gestational sac, you see where the baby is, and it is shaped irregular. It's not like a perfectly round or like oblong circle. It's got a little bit of a dent to it, and it's got all of these little kind of like pock marks around like my uterus. So she points that out to me, and she's like, I don't like the look of this. This is looking to me like it's presenting like a partial molar pregnancy. So at that point, I think the tech had mentioned it, because while we were waiting for the doctor, I had started Googling it, like, well, what does that mean? Like, what's a molar pregnancy? You know, what's going on? And ironically, I was watching Seeking Sister Wife, and one of the ladies on there, she had had a complete molar pregnancy where there's no baby, and it's just moles that keep growing in your uterus. And I was like, you know, that's really weird. I've never heard of that. And then coming to find out this. So then on 316, she comes in and she's like, you guys, I really don't like how this looks. If you look at the progression of the ultrasounds, you see that these little pock marks get progressively bigger every time I have an ultrasound. She said, this to me is presenting like a partial molar pregnancy, and I want you to be very careful the next week. If you start bleeding, you have a high risk of hemorrhaging, because these molar tissues, it's really confusing. They tend to bleed more. So you pass more tissue in this miscarriage than you would in a regular one. So she's like, if you start bleeding, if you start cramping, you need to go to the ER, and you need to let them know what's going on, because we're afraid of risk for hemorrhage for you. So I'm just kind of sitting there in shock, like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, I thought we were good. I thought we heard a heartbeat. I thought we were finally trending, like, you know, in the right direction for sure. And my husband is always like the optimist, and he's like, it's gonna be okay, don't worry about it. And yeah, she starts talking, but essentially a partial molar pregnancy, and we'll find out more when we actually get the results, is it's typically caused by triploidy, which is you have one set of DNA from your mom, or one DNA from your mom, and you have two sets of DNA from your dad. So an egg is fertilized by two sperm, which shouldn't happen, period. So it's a very random thing. It's like 1 in 1,000 pregnancies for a complete molar. It's even more rare for a partial molar, where you hear heartbeat and an actually like functioning fetus, baby, that's what it is at the time. So I was like, there's no way this has happened to me. Like, there's literally no way that this is happening. Like, you know, I thought like we had dodged a bullet, that we didn't have to do any more infertility treatments, and now this rare thing is happening to me. That completely sucks. So the main reason why I get so upset about a partial, not to mention miscarriage is already a completely devastating thing in itself, but usually after you have miscarriage, you can try again within 1 to 2 cycles. A partial or a complete molar pregnancy, you need to make sure all of the moles are gone, because they tend to regrow like cancer and can eventually turn into a form of cancer if they continue to exist in your body. So once you remove a complete molar or partial molar, you need to follow your HCG levels back down to 0. Make sure they stay 0 for a set number of time. There's a debate between 3 months after you hit 0. You need to wait 3 months after you hit 0, which may take months. Right now, my HCG right before the end was 60,000. So I needed to get to 0, stay 0 for an X amount of time or whatever. Not to mention, I will need to see a gynecologic oncologist, which is a cancer doctor for your lady parts, if the pathology comes back that this was indeed a partial molar pregnancy. So I can't continue to try to conceive or anything like that. So this is like a dead stop. It's like Kasky humor, dead stop in the tracks right now. So that's what I'm really, really, really having the hardest time with. You know, just trying to wait to see what comes back from pathology. So we go to that appointment. So I like break down. She's the sweetest lady ever, my doctor. And she's like, you know, it's okay to cry. I know you're just kind of like shocked right now, but let me hug you. And you know, it's never a good sign when the doctor needs to hug you after giving you some not so good news. So I just like lose it. So I'm just crying. And then they make me get blood work and they make me do like a complete blood count because she's fully expecting me to have a D&C within the next week or two. So I just broke down. Like that Wednesday, I remember, like I haven't been physically in my work office since then, like since the 16th of March. Like I stayed home and I tried to go about my day and I was just bawling. Like I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to do anything. Within that whole limbo wait, that's the worst. Like I don't wish that on anybody. That worst when you're like, okay, well, this isn't going to go right. And I'm still trying to have faith that it's going to go right, but I just don't feel it. So, and it was weird. Like we had a heartbeat that day. And like a few days later, I kind of felt different, like a shift. I don't know if you've been pregnant, you kind of feels like you're not alone. It's weird. I don't know. It feels like you're not alone in your body, even that early in pregnancy. And then all of a sudden, like that weekend, this was another Wednesday or Thursday, and that weekend I started to feel alone. So I was kind of like, okay, this is probably not going to go right at our next visit. So let me just prepare myself. And I needed to be prepared for it because I couldn't take any more of these limbo appointments. So in my head, I was like, you know what, they're going to go. They're going to tell us it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. So I broke down like completely all of the week before the D&C. And then by that, like Monday, Tuesday, I was kind of like numb. Like I was just like, okay, you know, it is what it is. Let's just do it. Let's just see what these results are. I'm ready to know either way. I'm tired of going to these appointments every week and just not knowing whether or not which way this is going to go. So then we come up to last Wednesday. We go in for the ultrasound and she's in there looking around. I'm like, oh God, you know, I'm just fully expecting her to just be like, you know what? I see the fetus, I see the baby, but there's no heartbeat. So that's all I was expecting. I wasn't expecting her to see like, well, your gestational sac has completely collapsed and all these moles that we saw last week are all there. They're much bigger this time. So yeah, the moles had overtaken the pregnancy, which is usually what happens in a partial molar pregnancy, or because it's genetically abnormal, it'll live up to like 8-9 weeks and then just pass away. So that was really hard to hear, like that the fact that they couldn't even find it. And she even brought my doctor in. My doctor came in, they were looking for it. Like there were so many sacs and holes in there, they couldn't tell which one was the gestational sac. So that news was kind of weird, but she is so amazing and so awesome that she offered, there's an oncologist, a gyno-oncologist like close to her office, and there's a maternal fetal medicine doctor that's up the hall. She's like, you know what, let me take these images, let me see what they think, because I really don't like how this looks. Like she's very earnest, like she was trying not to force a decision on us either way, but she was just like, I don't like this, I don't like that this is continuing. I feel like we need to get this out. So she ran up the hall and she showed it to them, saw what they thought. And they were like, yeah, you know, we should probably, she needs to get this taken care of immediately. So when I was preparing for the bad news, I thought, you know, I could make it to Monday, which today is Monday 26th, and have the D&C today, be off work for the next couple of days and just be fine. She didn't want me to go beyond the weekend. So that was, it just happened very fast after that. Like this appointment was like 2 p.m. and all of a sudden it was like boom, boom, boom. Okay, you need to come back here to this hospital in the morning and we're gonna do it. And I was just kind of numb. Like I remember telling like my husband, he's always optimist. He's the best. Like he's been the best support this time. I couldn't ask for a better partner than him. But I was gonna say I didn't cry. I was just kind of like survival mode. I just felt like if I start crying, I'm not gonna stop, like, ever. So I can't cry until the surgery's over. I need to make sure everybody's good. I need to make sure I'm good, and I just can't. Found out the news, I called my mom, and she just bawled because she had went through, her first pregnancy was a loss as well. She didn't want that for me. She was just crying, and I was like, you know what, it's gonna be okay. I'm just ready to get it over with at that point. To get it over with. So then it's like there's all these calls that the hospital needs to make, and they ask you if you have a living will. And the nurse who did my pre-op was so sweet. And when I told her what I was getting done, she was like, oh, is this your first? She's like, I'm so sorry, honey. She was the sweetest. Her name was Mary Jo, and I'll never forget her. And she came and saw me the next day, and she gave me the biggest hug, and she was just so sweet. I really appreciate that. We were just like, okay, so my husband kind of went into like crisis mode, like, oh my God, you're gonna have surgery. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna deal with this. Like, I just need you to be okay. That's all he was worried about. He just wanted me to be okay. You know, it's really hard to go through by yourself, and people hadn't known. So at this point, we were actually gonna announce the pregnancy probably on Easter, which was also April Fool's Day. We're gonna like offset it, not to do it on April Fool's. But yeah, so this was really hard since we got so close to not make it. So everything happened really fast. Wednesday, I had to pick up all the medication that night and come back like at 10 a.m. in the morning on Thursday to have the DNC done. And that's when I made the post on Facebook, like, you know what, this sucks. I was saying I'm not feeling very optimistic. Like, I'm just really angry. And I think that's what I get the most upset about now. And I have been crying since then. I didn't cry for like 3 days after because I think my hormones are coming down, hopefully. But I'm just angry that we had to go through infertility and now this potential like setback, like potential oncology doctors, like, you know. And I'm usually a person of faith, and that's really been helping me like up through the journey up until this happened. But it's like this would shake anybody's faith, and I'm just at the point right now where I don't want to be preached to about it. I don't want to hear scripture. Like, somebody told me on Facebook that God makes no mistakes, and honestly, that is the worst thing you could ever say to someone going through a loss. And I just deleted the comment and just moved on. It's just so upsetting. I'll get back there eventually, but right now I just am angry, and I'm allowed to be angry, and I'm allowed to process this how I feel like I need to process it. Up to the DNC day, it was pretty easy. You know, I came through anesthesia fine. Everybody was there. My mother-in-law was there. My sister took off. My dad was actually working in the hospital that day, like already before this schedule came up. So everybody came to visit, and we had a lot of support, and I posted that post on Instagram that Thursday night. We had so much support, and I just want to thank everybody for that. I love you, everybody who sent flowers or gifts or anything. I love you guys. Thank you right now, but I just need to process it. I don't know. I don't even know what I need to do. I just feel like a turtle. That's what I keep referring to as a turtle. Like, I just feel like I want to be in my shell, especially when people, like, I feel like too many questions are coming at me because I want to talk about it, but I want to talk about it on my own time. You know what I mean? And I don't want, like, there are things that will trigger me off. Like, my husband mentioned something about getting sushi last night, and that just made me really sad because, like, that's something we haven't been able to eat in like 2 months because I've been pregnant. And I'm like, well, I'm not pregnant anymore, so we can eat it. So it just makes me like really sad. So I just am being very protective of myself right now and not really going out and really wanting to do anything. So also, while this all was happening, what really majorly sucks is my husband's birthday was Friday, and I had the DNC Thursday. So we tried to avoid it to have like a good birthday weekend, but I was like, just not with it this whole weekend. But I still tried to make sure he had fun, and it's really hard for me, especially, it's like two sides of the coin right now. It's like, it's hard for me when people act like nothing happened to me and just like, you know, carry on like, you know, everything's great. Like, it's hard for me to accept that because I'm like, I'm over here, I'm literally like dying on the inside, and everybody is carrying on like, you know, everything's fine over here, which is sometimes you need that, and then sometimes I just want to be asked about it, you know. And I understand it's just a dichotomy, and maybe it's the hormones coming down, but that's just where I am right now. And I just wanted to make this video because I just wanted to get my story out, and maybe in a place where I can refer people back to. So on the days when I don't want to talk about it, I can send somebody here, like, you know what, just watch this video. This is everything that happened. this is how I'm feeling, this is how we're doing. He's really angry, he's upset too, and I try to be really aware of how he's feeling as well. And I think he thinks it's funny, like, why are you asking me how I'm doing? You went through it, but we both went through it together. So I don't know, it feels like for a while there, it felt like in the limbo days, it was like I liked sleeping a lot because I could forget, but then that pain that hits you when you wake up and you remember that you're going through this, it's just really hard. And my battery is flashing at me right now. But yeah, that's what I'm going through. I hope it'll get better from here, and I hope when I go check on my follow-up that my levels are going down. But that's all the update I had for now, and I'll see you guys in my next video.